Thank you so much for joining us tonight at She Talks Tech, Women's Health Innovation Edition. We are thrilled to welcome you all to Catalyst Commons for an evening of powerful conversation, community, and change. My name is Megan Gervais, and I am the Manager of Founder Experience at the Accelerator Center. At the AC, we work with founders across every sector, from AI and fintech to clean tech and, of course, health tech, to build companies that not only scale, but truly make an impact. One of the reasons we created She Talks Tech is to amplify the voices we don't hear enough in our industry, particularly women founders and innovators who are solving the kinds of problems that have gone ignored for far too long. Tonight's theme, women's health, is a powerful example of that. It's a sector that's been historically underfunded and underserved, but we're lucky to be surrounded by incredible change makers who are stepping into the gap and building the future of care. That's why we host events like this to bring our community together, spark dialogue, and shine a light on the people doing this great work. Before we dive in, I want to thank Catalyst Commons for generously hosting us in their beautiful space this evening. We're so grateful for your partnership and ongoing support of the local tech ecosystem. And of course, I'd like to give a very special thank you to our moderator tonight, Ellyn Winters Robertson. Ellyn, well-deserved Ellyn. Ellyn is not only a long-standing member of the Accelerator Center family, but she's also one of our most inspiring mentors and founders. Hell yeah. She first joined the AC back in 2009 to offer PR and marketing sponsorship and quickly became the go-to guide for everything from product market fit to customer storytelling. Her warmth, empathy, and insight have touched countless founders over the years. We're lucky to have you here. In 2023, Ellyn became the very first mentor turned founder in AC history, launching the Lindell Project and her conversational care tech platform, AskEllyn.ai, which helps support women navigating breast cancer. Her journey is the perfect example of what it means to lead with purpose, and we're so lucky to have her leading tonight's conversation. Please join me in welcoming Ellyn to the stage.
I am so excited to be here. This is, as we all know, a big passionate topic for me. And I have the honor of having worked with all of the ladies on this panel, and I can tell you they're extraordinary. So I would like to invite up to the stage, and I'm just going to go based on where you're sitting. So Ellyn Zhao, I'd like to bring Ellyn up. Ellyn and I met at a youth tech conference. And she was inspired by the work that I had done with Ask Ellyn, and we are now fast friends. She is a student at Laurel Heights Collegiate Institute. Secondary school, sorry. I would never get it right. I also like to invite Asha Khan. Asha is at Cameron Heights. Asha is also a change maker and was also inspired by Ask Ellyn to create technology. These two young ladies who haven't yet even hit the ripe old age of 20 are incredible forces of nature, believe me. I often joke and say that Asha is the most 45-year-old, 16-year-old I've ever met in my life. I'd also like to invite up Ibukan Elibility. I didn't do it. I butchered it. I know I did. Ibi is the CEO of Select. She's at the Accelerator Center in our STEM program. We've had the honor of working with her as she and her co-founder are developing their technology. And finally, we have Rachel Bartholomew. Rachel is also a fellow cancer survivor and was a tremendous inspiration for me. I looked at her and the work that she's done with her company, Hyivy, and I said, I need to be like Rachel. She is also leading the Femtech revolution in Canada as the founder of Femtech Canada. So, wow, what a great panel. So I have lots of questions, and I hope we will not take up all the space and leave you guys time to have your own questions. But I'm going to kick one off, and I'd like everybody to sort of answer in turn, if you can. So what inspired you to begin innovating in women's health, And how did your personal story and passion lead you here? I'll start with you, Ellyn.
Is this going to turn on? Oh,
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here, and I'm so excited to be chatting with you all today in what I think is a really critical sphere of dialogue. In terms of my own journey, I think a lot of my own passion for women's health comes from being a survivor myself, quote unquote. When I was a few years ago, in my ripe years of adolescence, I found a lot of difficulty with mental health and just a lot with comparison and with the toxic domains in social media that you can get really sucked into. And so I found a lot of difficulty with body image and with disordered eating. And coming out of that, I really wanted to turn my pain into prevention for others. And upon a serendipitous encounter with Ellyn and her coworker, Pat Beliveau at Gambit Technologies for Ask Ellyn, I was inspired by this tool that could really create accessible and non-judgmental support. And it's something that I really would have benefited from, I felt, had I had that during my time of difficulty. And so I wanted to create that for others and begin my project that is Hyivy.ai. So that's a little bit about me, and we can discuss more.
Yeah, and you can both Asha and Ellyn's technologies are available. You can go and actually Google them and have a little chat with them. So Asha, over to you. So what inspired you, and what was your personal story and passion that really drove your technology?
Just echoing Ellen's sentiment here, I think she has a really powerful story. And I think where my passion came from, ever since I was young, I've always been an advocate for women's rights. But as well in my adolescent years, when I started menstruating, I found my environment a little bit more difficult to navigate, and I had so many questions about going through this experience and what it means. And lucky enough, I was in a household where I could talk about periods openly. But I realized if I have so many questions and I still have someone to talk to, what about people who don't? And thinking about this, thinking about people who go their first period alone, it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying, not knowing what's happening to your own body and not being able to have someone to talk to. And thinking about this, I started to reflect on my social situation at school. And when the conversation of menstruation is brought up in school, you can see a lot of different teenage boys at my school who make comments that are born out of either discomfort or ignorance. Now, there are a lot of terms thrown around like Shark Week, and some guys were laughing at their friends saying, "Oh, are you on your period?" And this stigma and also an education around this topic really stuck with me. And I thought, well, at first I was angry, let's be real, but then I thought, why are they thinking this? What brought this about? Why are these ideas rooted here? And I started to reflect on the systems around us where this stigma was deeply ingrained, and especially systems like healthcare. And thinking about that, I really wanted to change the conversation for women, where they now have the credibility and are able to openly, in a space that is judgment-free and safe, talk about periods, and making sure that they know they're not going through this experience alone.
Amazing. Evie, what brought you into innovation in women's health? And is there a passion, personal story? Yeah.
I was just going to comment on just how inspiring these two ladies are.
I know.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't start out thinking I was going to innovate or, start a women's healthcare company. I was in industry for about 10 years in the health tech space, and I actually moved to Kitchener-Waterloo because I wanted to find a startup project out of the university that I could join forces with. And I started searching. I started going to Velocity's programs. We have I have two people from Velocity here. And that's where I met my co-founder who, I just was fascinated by her personality and her story. She had a terrible pap smear experience. And, she was like, yeah, I created this company out of spite. And I'm like, wow, But I think for me, it hit two criteria, which was one, I was looking for a company that, was in the health tech space. And secondly, one that I would deeply resonate with. And so, for me, just coming to know how underserved women's healthcare has been for so long, it almost kind of built this anger, and what has turned to a drive, for what we're building at Select. So that's my story. Yeah,
it's cool. Okay, Rachel, over to you, man.
Oh boy. Okay. The three ladies over here that are really impressive. My goodness, making me feel old up here. Okay, I'm going to try to make my long story short. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer at 28 years old, 5 years ago. I was getting treatment, found out I had pretty bad pathology, had to go and get further treatment. And I was going into the radiation suite, and they told me, go up and get this medical device from the pharmacy. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool, medical device, tech, amazing. And I go up, and they hand me a glass test tube. And they told me to insert this glass test tube every other day for 5 years into my body. Yeah. And this is something called a vaginal dilator. It was created in 1938 by Dr. Robert Frank. God bless him, but Robert, you got some work to do. I don't think he's alive anymore, actually. No, probably not. Anyways, started unearthing the conspiracy theory that is women's health, obviously. And the medieval torture devices, all our women in the room who've had pap smears, speculum,
Yep.
Nothing has been innovated in this space. So during my treatment, came up with an idea, started pitching it while I was under the radiation machine to the radiation technologists. They then shared that to my oncologist. My oncologist called me into the room and was like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying. She's calling me in for a meeting and this is not going well. And she's like, I heard you're doing this thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying. And that was a validation that I needed from the clinician's side on top of the thousands of patients I was talking to on Facebook for my solution. So started a company, realized very quickly women's health sucks because we just don't know anything, and investors don't really care because they're all white men who don't have vaginas, and I'm making a product for vaginas, and I needed therapy, and so I collected a room over an Easter long weekend, which is actually just coming up, 51 women working in women's health across Canada, and it was a giant therapy session that turned into a national initiative called Femtech Canada, now government funded, sponsored by Sun Life. We're 180 companies working in women's health across Canada and growing 54% growth year over year. And we are the third largest women's health ecosystem in the world. And then I said, I don't have enough to do, and I created Femtech Across Borders, and I started with 23 countries, and now I'm supporting 74 countries and their women's health initiatives. So that's it.
That's it. All right, I'm going to go back up to the front here. The second question I have for the panel, and again, you can just take it in turn. What's a misconception people have about women's health innovation? Ellyn, over to you.
I mean, it's a big question for sure. A misconception. Now, I'm coming at this with a very fresh pair of eyes. Obviously, I have a lot more research to do, a lot more experience to be experienced. But I think something that should be more well known is that women's health isn't solely a women's issue. Women's health affects everyone, the people who love us and the people who we love. And if women are thriving, then that just touches so many areas. And I think right now especially, and I'm very grateful to be sort of growing up in this era where there's a lot more conversations about feminism and uplifting women and especially women's health. But sometimes it feels as if people who are outside of this realm maybe feel left out, or maybe feel like the attention is now being too focused on a group that has been historically underserved and left out. And that can create even more divisiveness and sabotage the very goals of this very positive thing that was supposed to be positive in the first place. So I think a lot of what we have to do is, as women and as allies, come together and have mutual understanding, because we're all feeling as if the other side doesn't understand us, or that, yeah, I feel like we need to have more spaces like this to chat and to learn about the other sides and really have an open eye, because I think that could solve a lot.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled to see, for example, the men in the room, right, tonight. And I'm pretty sure that all of us came from a mother. I'm just saying. Asha, over to you.
I think a misconception is that women's health is a niche, or that it's soft, or that it's only relevant to women. As Elaine was saying, it's relevant to everyone. Everyone has a woman in their life. As you said, they came from a woman. And I think when we start to focus on people as a whole and how we can grow together as one ecosystem, there's so much more innovation and impact that can come from it. And I actually have, I had a really interesting experience today that I'd love to share with you all, where I had a spirit assembly at my school today, and there was a video playing where everyone introduced himself and a fun fact about themselves. And one of the men introduced himself, and it was a young teenage boy, and he said a fun fact about himself is that he's passionate about women's rights. And I can't tell you how many teenage girls in that audience cheered for that man, and just understanding that I think from a young age we've cultivated the idea that men, when they talk about women's rights, are laughed or looked down upon, but that is so, so untrue. And in fact, I hold a great deal of respect for men who are able to talk passionately about women's rights as well. So I'd like to echo Elaine's sentiments.
And he also knows how to get a date. I'm just saying. Evie, how about you?
Yeah, so I'll say that, I'll say that it's not a side project. I think there.
I felt the angst in your voice when you said that.
And so that's one side. The second side is, the fact that we think that, women who have the problem, who are feeling it every day, think that it's going to be solved some way, sometime. The truth is, we understand the problems more than people who are not experiencing it, right? And so we need to be the drivers of it, and we need to act like it's a big deal, because it is, right? Women constitute more than half the world's population. I think that in itself gives a good business case to investors who may not understand the problem or understand how big it is. So I think I just want to see women's healthcare given the seriousness and attention that it so desperately deserves. Yeah.
Yeah. Rachel, I'm sure you're going to have a lot to say on this.
No. I'll make it quick, I promise. I think the biggest thing for me is I don't know how we've survived as a civilization up until this point. In how we've treated women and how we've taken care of their health care. And you look, has anybody read Invisible Women, the book? Okay, you all have to go and purchase that book ASAP. It talks about it's not just healthcare, it's seatbelts weren't properly made for women. It's everything that we interact with on a daily basis. And when you look at when women were actually required to be a part of clinical trials, and the amount of drugs and devices and everything, pretty much I would be really interested to go into a hospital and count all of the things that we interact with that were actually not developed with women's data at all. And I go, how are we still alive? It's actually a miracle. And then somebody told me it's definitely the witches, and I'm going on that. It's been the witches. The witches are what kept us alive up until this point. But no, seriously, it is anesthetic. I didn't know when we go under anesthesia, that largely was not tested on women. A little scary, no?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The Tylenols we take like everything. And we have no idea what actually is happening. We truly, like, that is not a misconception. It is like the true fact of we have no idea. And there's so much work and there's so much research still to do. And stigma is a thing, but stigma is only as much as the walls we put up, right? So how many of you have actually asked your mother what her menopause experience was, right? Okay, a couple, thank God. Oh my God, we got a good audience for once. It's these things that we just don't talk about. And that stigma is there from everything that the world has put a box around us, but we're the ones that are putting that box up. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to that, I'm pretty sure, and don't quote me on the stats, but I think it's only since the 1980s that women have been included in drug trials of any kind. Another book that is a must-read is Elizabeth Coman's All in Her Head, which is looking at the history of medicine and how it has treated women. It's an absolutely eye-popping.
Yeah, we're hysterical, right?
Yep.
We're like all hysterical, need to be chained down, and like, God forbid we might be pregnant at all times. So let's not make sure that they go into clinical trials because the baby's more important, right?
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, Elaine, I'm going to just kind of go through this. We got a nice little order here going. So Hi Eddie tackles a topic that is often stigmatized, eating disorders,
Definitely.
right? So how have you combined technology and storytelling to make conversations around body image and eating disorder feel safe and compassionate?
And just to preface that question, my conversational agent, Hyivy.ai, is there to support people with eating disorders and also just body image healing in general. I hope it can be there from the most mildest, bad body image insecurity days to wanting to recover and wanting to get over what can be an overwhelming pain in your mind. And so creating spaces where I can be creating spaces to destigmatize things and to talk about things that are a little bit taboo is I think something that I'm just naturally drawn to. So I had an eating disorder when I was around 14, and when I was healing from that, I just saw all of these things around me that deeply triggered me. It would always roil me up, and I felt I needed to tell other people to question their beliefs, to question the messaging around us. And I actually happened upon this opportunity to do a TEDx talk at a local youth-led conference. Shout out to Asha, who helped organize that conference actually at the local University of Waterloo. And so I performed a speech called The Weight of Our Obsession with Weight, where I vulnerably shared my own experience with an eating disorder and talked about weight bias, talked about fat phobia around us, and how intertwined this issue also is with media and with consumerism. And these are all just things based off I observed. I also paired research with my speech. And just being unafraid to speak out is, I think, the first big step. I didn't worry about if it would look poorly on me or about maybe the future consequences if someone saw me doing this speech. I more just wanted to get the message out there and knew I wanted to be an agent of change. So following my TEDx talk, I sort of wanted to build these conversation spaces for others, so others can have it in their pocket. And that is, I think, a strong philosophy of Hyivy.ai, where you can talk to someone that won't judge you and that is there 24/7 and can be a voice of reason to pierce through the messaging that is often twisted in our own minds. And so that's what I would say about creating safe spaces, non-judgmental spaces.
Yeah, it's an amazing tool, and I shared with Elaine that I've given it to a friend of mine who knows someone who is struggling with an eating disorder, and it's really hard because both they and their parents are frantic, and there are very limited programs that are available, and they're extremely expensive as well, and the wait lists are long. So, I see Hyivy as being a really instrumental bridge, to help, right? So
Definitely. It's that immediate emotional relief and solace. It can help link you to sources that are medically expert and can help you in a professional way. And yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. Asha, with Ask Eve, you're building AI. I know, again, remember, she's a 45-year-old stuck in a 16-year-old body, but you are still building AI for social good at a very young age. What was it like to develop Ask Eve, and why did you choose? Well, you kind of actually talked about this. You've already talked about menstruation as a focus, so I'm going to kind of switch this up a little bit. So how do you ensure that youth-driven health tech like Ask Eve remains accessible and culturally sensitive for diverse populations?
I think the first thing to say about that cultural sensitivity isn't a checkbox, it's a commitment.
Yeah.
And for that, there was also a huge talk when we had Ask Eve about, it having vetted resources that you could go to different websites and you can be informed about your own body. But there is also a conversation about different gender identities, and that led me down a huge rabbit hole where there's so many period products that aren't accommodating to different gender identities, and I thought, the silence must be even louder for them. So really, it's not even just having a place that is safe and judgment-free, it's a place where you can feel seen. And then what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, it was really about the culturally sensitive for diverse populations. I know you have big ambitions with UN Girl Up and your association with that to bring this technology to girls around the world, right?
And for context, so in addition to being the founder of Ask Eve, I also work for an organization called Girl Up, which provides leadership opportunities for girls across the world. And I work as a teen advisor co-chair for the 2025 advisory board. And there, what I'm hoping to do is to introduce Ask Eve on a global scale, and to ensure that this accessibility, it's not limited to a few people, it is for all. And I'm hoping through many sponsorships, I can offer this for free so that cost is not a barrier for anyone who needs to use this tool.
Very good. EB, Rachel touched on the fact that, with vaginal dilation, there's been no advancement. There's been no advancement in the last 50 years with the pap smear either. So why did we pick that as your area of focus, and how do you see the advancement of women's health in diagnostics sort of evolving? Like, what's your path to market look like?
Absolutely. So, it's crazy. 50 years after, we're still using cold metal. But I think what I'm super excited about, and just being in this space, is the fact that what we're building at Select is not just about cervical cancer. We picked cervical cancer because the screening is something a lot of people can relate to. But when we started speaking to gynecological research labs, and they're so excited about what we're doing, they're like, hey, you guys are making sample collections that we've never had the opportunity of being able to research, that we're so curious about. And they're thinking about how the collection device would be able to preserve proteins that they can, and biomarkers that they can now explore, that they weren't able to do before. And I'm super excited for this because, it would start touching, just wider gynecological conditions, PCOS, endometriosis, and fertility issues and things like that. So it's just very exciting. And there's even indications to tell us that maybe we can find early indications of breast cancer from vaginal fluids. And it's crazy because for so long, this fluid has been so stigmatized. Right? You think about how we use poop, we use sweat, we use urine, all for diagnostic samples, right? But menstrual blood, which apparently has a lot of information, has just completely been ignored for so long. So, for me, yes, cervical cancer, but also all the other things that we'll be able to unlock just with what we're doing.
It's so cool, right? Rachel, I'm going to use moderator's privilege and tuck a little question in here for you, because I know your device is not just for vaginal dilation. It is a diagnostic device as well. And so I'd love you to talk a little bit about sort of elaborate on what EB's doing in terms of the kind of information that you're going to be able to gather.
Yeah, for sure. So when I went out to create our product, initially I thought it was a therapeutic. And I looked at it as how do we create and provide better vaginal dilation, but then think about other aspects of what's needed in that. And so we paired in drug delivery and hot and cold, which you'd think is very, use it everywhere else in the body. Why couldn't you use it in this area? And we started with that. We then said, okay, we should probably monitor the safety of these therapeutics. Let's put some biosensors into it. So each of our therapeutics came with a biosensor. And what we found in kind of our first in human and some of this tracking that we've been doing is really odd, weird benchmarking data that was coming back. So for instance, our women who are who had cancer have higher intervaginal temperatures into the fever levels, and their basal body temperatures were normal. So we threw that back out to the doctors, and the doctors are like, it's infection, no, it's inflammation, no, it's metabolic, no, it's this, no, it's that. Nobody knows because nobody's tracked it and nobody's stuck a sensor in there. So now we're on this journey of getting our therapeutic to market, collecting the data, not only for the safety of the therapeutic in progress, but also tracking this new benchmarking data, packaging that up in real world evidence as our hypothesis for larger trials we'll need to run on the diagnostic side. So that's the exciting piece on that.
Yeah, and you kind of illustrate this wonky, wobbly, journey that we take, all of us in startup land, where you think you're building one thing and then all of a sudden something else emerges. Yeah. I have one follow-on question for you. I'm going to just switch gears to talk about your role at Femtech Canada. So what are the things that excite you? What trends are you seeing? And what do you think is really needed to solve all the problems that we've just been talking about?
Yeah, so trends-wise, when I first started Femtech Canada, we were about 52% consumer packaged goods. So tampons, menstrual products, all of these things, great, fine, but little deep tech, little digital health. Our digital health has boomed now. When I first started, we had one menopause company. They fell through the cracks, but then like a whole burst of menopause companies came out of kind of her transitioning off. So seeing a lot of attention to menopause, a lot of attention to digital health products, still a lot of focus in menstruation, pregnancy, fertility, which fine, but there's a lot of big challenges to solve. So my big, deep passion is the deep tech science stuff, really collecting that data. Now, the biggest thing, and I'm actually very anti-AI. If anybody knows me, I'm very anti-AI because I believe AI and everything that we're doing is moving us backwards in women's health because we don't have the fundamental data to feed the AI to train the system in the first place. So we just create more solutions that just moves us forward. And it's funny, I went straight to the government who put that $200 million whatever funding program together for AI. And I go, hey, did you think about women and the fact that we have no data? And they're like, oh yeah, the LGBTQ group also said that too. And it's like, oh, okay, so we just deploy cash without understanding where we're actually, the impact we're having. So I'm on this mission now, and I don't need another mission, but I'm on it, to try to push the narrative around. We need to take a couple steps back to focus on getting the proper data and understanding where the data gaps are. We have brilliant data about women's health across Canada. We have amazing researchers. Where are the gaps? How do we then prioritize research to fill them, the data to fill them? And then let's create solutions to solve problems instead of creating solutions to half solve a problem when we don't even know the context of the problem in the first place.
I think, yes, 100%, please. I also want to say that I think we just heard the birth of an idea that we need to create a all-female LLM.
I want to create a data lake.
Yeah.
And I want to create a data lake that everyone contributes into and that is owned by the government, has all the privacy and HIPAA and PIPEDA and blah, blah, blah associated with it. And I want to then use AI to go in and tell me, here's a gap, here's a gap, here's a gap, here's a gap. Okay, here's the right research to fill that gap. Here's that, here's that. Okay, now we are ready to go.
I'm going to throw this one to both EB and Rachel, because I think you both have something to say on this. But from a leadership perspective, what do you think it takes to bring a scientific breakthrough to life in this startup world? Because we're dancing in healthcare here, and there's systemic barriers that exist that kind of almost prevent innovation from breaking through. So where are you at?
Yeah, so I'll say
Psychopathy.
I'll say the science is exciting, but being able to be strategic on how you go to market is important. So I'll give an example. A lot of the times when I talk about our product, a lot of people just think B2C. They're thinking just go to the women and start advertising, which is great. However, is there a B2B opportunity there? We all know how, B2B just gives you some more credibility, as well as just it could be an easier vehicle to get to where you need to get to. And so our story was, doing some validation and finding diagnostic partners and diagnostic labs could be a very game-changing distribution channel for what we're trying to do. And it wasn't obvious at first until we started speaking to some of them. And later on, it made sense because these people already they're at the center of the the healthcare delivery system, and we could just literally plug our innovation within existing infrastructure. It's leaner for us. We don't have to spend as much money, and we're getting where we need to get to. Mm-hmm. And so, right now, because we're still early stage, this is our thesis, but it's how we're intending to approach the market. So for me, I think it's, be excited about the science, but also think about what are the best vehicles to get to where you need to get to, and just looking at other opportunities than the obvious. That's what I'll say there.
Yeah.
I think it's two things. It's being crazy enough to start, right? You have to be a little bit crazy and have a little bit of psychosis in order to start a company or an idea in the first place. When you start, you then need to have the forgiveness and the flexibility to be able to bring in the criticism and reflect it out as opportunity. Mm-hmm. So being able to do that constantly and being able to then be adaptive to change, that flexibility to change. Because to this day, I am 5 years into this insane journey of clinical trials and developing a hardware product in a medical space. I've done none of those three things ever in my life before. I'm figuring it out as I'm going. I have amazing, beautiful Christy on my team and other people who are just helping me learn this space. And I am the dumbest person in the room and they're teaching me. And that is what this is all about. Science comes out of that. Brilliance comes out of that. Learnings come out of it. But you just have to take that first step to do it. My business to this day is still changing. And it will continue to change. And if it's not changing, then you're not adapting to the market, you're not adapting to your customer, you're not adapting to anything.
That's the characteristics of resilience, right? Reframing and resilience. Okay, we're going to throw it out to the panel. You guys are going to fight over the questions as to who wants to lead. All right, we talked a little bit about AI. So let's start there. How can we ensure that AI and tech tools in women's health are inclusive, trauma-informed, and trustworthy? And we already heard from Rachel that she, feels that we need a data lake, and I don't disagree, that we need to have, women's inputs to be able to actually have good outputs. Do others have a thought on?
First of all, I can say that I really see where your concerns come from, Rachel, and the lack of like women-informed or underserved group-informed data and research. Actually, in the process of building Hyivy.ai, I really wanted to make sure that I was coming at this with a well-informed like gear of knowledge and more knowledge both on like the technical like functioning of the product itself, which I co-created with Gambit Technologies, but also like the psychosocial experiences of the people who would use the product. So I embarked on a literature review that was actually published in an international conference on computing, and data science. And I learned that a lot of R&D is missing on underserved groups in terms of race, gender, and socioeconomic status. So there were a lot of gaps out there that I discovered through my own research about like developing products, whether that was for like eating disorders or other mental health issues. So I really see the problems there. And one way that I tried to subvert this and to fill the gaps in my own chatbot was simply to include the experiences of those people directly in the chatbot. So if you didn't know, my chatbot sort of takes on this persona of Eddie, and her narrative is sort of based on my own narrative with my eating disorder and what helped me, etc. But I also interviewed neurodivergent individuals, men, because that is an under-talked about issue in the realm of eating disorders, LGBTQ plus individuals, and more, and imbued their stories in the knowledge base that my chatbot draws on. So Eddie will not only speak about her own experience, but also the experiences of these other people to really connect with and help a diversity of users as much as possible. And that's one way I tried to combat, I guess, the lack of accommodating these different experiences through my own project.
Anyone else? Yeah, Asha?
I just want to say, working with Gambit, I went through a similar experience to Ellyn. And Rachel, I actually completely understand what you're saying. Also, in addition to Ask Even Girl Up, I founded an organization called Youth Tech Labs, and we teach AI literacy to high school students. So I actually went on my own journey of trying to figure out what does AI mean and how does AI work. And looking at the technical side of it, I realized that a lot of the biases when AI first came out in its early years, which is not very long ago, that a lot of the biases it holds reflects on our societal biases. So knowing that and making Ask Eve, I was stumped a little bit at first with the conversation of, well, I want to make this as informed as possible, but I just simply don't have the data to do that. So reading over many different websites and trying to vet all this information and put it in, yes, we have some out there, but we're also still missing so much. And I would love to get my hands on that data to actually make it so that it's informed, so it's specific and caters to the user.
I would just like to, add, almost like put a question out there is, you mentioned something very, very key about how there's not enough data to feed the AI in the first place, right? And my question is, how can we make sure that the research labs, wherever they are across the world, across the country, are picking on these critical subjects to study over time? Because we have to admit, a lot of these research are not things that would just come out over a few weeks, right? There would need to be extensive time that goes into the research. So my question that I'm putting out is there a way that we can, through identifying those data gaps that you mentioned, Rachel, can we plug that in to different research institutions across data link? But you see what I mean, because yes, it would identify the data gaps, but how can we make sure that these questions are taken to where they need to go?
It does really feel like there's got to be some kind of a consortium or something, where different parties come together. It's almost like a really great project to be pitched to a Mackenzie Bezos or a Melinda Gates or something, how do we, it's going to be so fundamental to society going forward, AI, and so let's assemble the data, right? Yeah.
So can I just mention something? I was very amazed at how something as simple as menstrual blood, there's no research on exact compositions.
No, it's the
Wild.
same. There's a company called Fibra. They're using vaginal discharge to get biomarkers. They had to use horse discharge to be able to understand the basics. That's what they're using right now. And then they just have patients walking around, and they've collected 5 million data points just from patients wearing it, just so that they can have a database to pull from in the first place.
It's crazy. Okay, I'm going to shift the focus yet again. We're now going to look out there, forward. So looking ahead, ladies, what does the ideal future of women's health innovation look like? What's that nirvana that we're...
I think it's where credibility for women's health issues are believed, and that we have informed data that that's possible, that women don't have to fight for proper health care. They don't have to advocate for themselves when they're already going through such a traumatic experience and navigating their own bodies. I think it's looking to a society where we see it as not just a woman's problem, but as a societal problem, and that we're able to solve it together. It's not solving it individually in different companies or organizations. It's us working together, coming together as a community and focusing on that initiative and goal to solve the problem.
Rachel?
It's more funding, it's more research, it's more data, it's more attention, it's more of everything. It's happening now. Like, Femtech in itself has grown 300% since the term was coined by Ida Tin in 2016. The momentum is there, but it's not just about equality, it's about equity, because every single woman's experience is different, it's complex, and it needs to be served as such. And I hope that we can get into the 21st century on basic things. Like, the one thing that always comes to mind is endometriosis. Like, patients who deal with that and they have no idea what causes it. There's 200 million women out there with it. And all they can do is cut them open, scrape their insides out, and then I'll see you back in 5-6 years to do the same thing over again for the rest of your life. And they go, oh, get pregnant or go through menopause and you'll be fine. No, that is not the answer. And there's women struggling every single day, and there's more women struggling every day in managing everything that we manage on top of our own healthcare. And so we deserve that funding, that attention, that research, everything. But it's it's so multi-layered. It's the way we've trained our doctors. Like, our anatomy books don't even have the proper anatomy up until 5 years ago or something. Like, we've got a long way to come, but I think the progress is starting. So I'm hoping that we'll get there.
This is one last question just to wrap things up. I want to ask the panel, we can't talk about the future without talking about the present, and we're in a very tumultuous time when it comes to the political climate globally, certainly what's going on in the US right now, the clawbacks of scientific funding and research. Yes, we've had tremendous momentum in the last couple of years with Femtech and, sort of an appreciation of women's health. Are we worried about what this looks like?
I'm going to jump in here. Women's health is never going away. Like, I'm putting that out there. It doesn't matter how many NIH grants get cut, no matter how many people tell you to do whatever. It's never going away. So what happens? We get scrappy. Do we go underground? Do we go in the forest with the witches? Like, we're going to make it through it, guys. Like, no matter what, because women in our core DNA is resilience, and point blank, period.
Don't make us mad, right? Yes. Yeah, right. Anybody else got a thought on the future? Are you optimistic? Where's the youth at the table? Are you excited? Are you optimistic?
I feel like we have to be fighters, and most things that are brilliant come born out of fighting for a cause, and this is a very noble and worthy and necessary cause to fight for that we are still continuing to fight for. But when I see different projects like Ellyn, what you're working on, and Ellyn, what you've worked on, I feel like that gives us the courage and inspiration to keep going.
Aw, thank you. Well, look,
If I could just add really quick.
yeah.
I am quite optimistic despite a lot of negative news that I see. I mean, we see it in this room, we see it up here. There are change makers everywhere, but we do need like the data, the testing, like we need other people to support what impacts that these things can make. And I think as long as, change exists here, right now in English class, I'm actually reading 1984 and
I lived it.
a lot to think about. I love it. But something that really resonated with me was Winston's revelations about how you can hold on to your humanity if it exists here. You can rebel against the system if you retain your core beliefs. And I think as women and as allies, if we keep the agenda, we will make it happen. Even if we're quashed all the way through, even if there's external forces that try to, push it down, it will push through. And the witches are here to help us too.
Anyways, I want to thank our amazing panelists so much. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I am blown away by everything that these women have accomplished. They are my heroes.
And we're blown away by you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. So,
Blown away by you, and we love you.
aw. Thanks very much. Anybody have any questions? Oh, Megan.
Hi. This goes to anyone here, but in all of your talks, whether it's investors, whether it's members of the public, whether it's family or friends, what is some of the feedback that you've heard from your products, from your journey? Does anybody have anything that they'd want to share?
I think a lot of it is that when talking about menstruation, we mostly see or just focus on a lot of the physical aspects of what we're going through, but a lot of the psychological impacts are overlooked. So when creating Ask Eve, I think a lot of what went into it is making sure that it was empathetic and understanding, that it wasn't just based on a machine. And I think that's the other huge conversation around menstruation that we're lacking right now, is that we need to start cultivating an environment that is empathetic and that is safe and judgment-free.
My experience with Ask Ellyn was very much that as well, that it was really that empathetic understanding and that compassion that people really, and that the system just can't deliver right now, so.
Wait.
It's kind of a bit more, I guess, more for you, Rachel, because you work with so many Femtech companies across the world. I'm curious with what's going on in the States and politically, are you seeing a shift where people are coming maybe back to Canada and shifting kind of money back into Canada, or what kind of have you seen there?
Oh boy. It's funny because I'm going through that same exact challenge. It's tough, right? It's tough with Canada because for a product like me, I have no pathway here. I have no pathway other than selling my product over the counter, like off the shelf, directly to patients. And my biggest worry with that is, do I have the same archetype of woman using my product, collecting data that is not diverse enough and does not represent the entire population? So I keep that in the back of my mind, knowing that I can eventually come here and do that, but I want to make sure that there's proper grounds for that. Through Femtech Across Borders and my work with the US groups, they're trudging ahead. Yeah. Like they're truly trudging ahead. A lot of the global ecosystems coming around them, even though there is such polarization, I think we're still rooted in that one goal. And like I said, women's health doesn't go away. And I think we all know and understand that. And everyone's just getting creative with how to keep things going. We're doing a clinical trial right now with Hyivy in a transgender population. And the doctor that we're working with is in the US. And if he does these surgeries, he could potentially go to jail. And I call him up and I'm like, what are we doing? Are we still doing this? And he's like, I got my lawyer. I've already talked to him.
Suited
We're already
up.
10 steps ahead. Yeah, he's like, we're going full steam ahead until I'm in cuffs.
Wow.
So, it's still happening. Everyone's still doing what we can until the very, very last end, and then we pivot and we figure it out from there. So that's what I'm seeing in the total community.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to throw this to you.
Oh, cool. That's amazing. So I come from the group insurance world, and on the wellness side of things, the corporate health and wellness world. Exciting to hear about the partnership with Sun Life. And there are many, many global and Canadian insurance group benefits carriers out there. Some of them are innovative, others not so much. Some are leaders, some will never follow. So I'm curious to know, what is the expectation, the hope, the dreams for the support from that part of our economy?
So I'll tell you a little story about, hopefully there's nobody Sun Life in the room, but this isn't a bad story either. My story with Sun Life was they came to us, they participated in a Femtech forum for investors, and we curated some people to meet with them, and they were like, okay, we want to dive in a little more, let's invite you down the street. And so I came in and they're like, we want to do fertility benefits. And I'm like, great, women are maybe pregnant 18 months of their entire lives. Yes, they go through fertility, but then what about the rest of their life, right? And it was interesting because they had wealth management at the table. And wealth management is sitting there going, our group of women are coming, we're trying to figure out how to make them investors because they're coming into the most wealth that they've ever had, A, in their careers, but B, also in wealth transfer from parents that are dying. And I'm like, oh, and they're also going through the biggest change since puberty in their body, or maybe pregnancy, who knows, that they can't avoid, and they're at the height of their careers and they're still expected to work and be on their game. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, menopause, right? And lo and behold, this big aha moment came off, and we invited a bunch of menopause companies to come in. They're now partnering and stuff like that. So I think part of what I'm seeing with the general, it's insurance, but it's not just insurance. It's J&J, it's Merck, it's Bayer. They are, even if they're working in the life sciences sphere, they are trying to find the people who are working in women's health to guide them and to hold their hands and to tell them what is going on and where they need to focus their energy. And so I think everybody has good intentions. I think everybody wants to do something, they just don't know where to land yet. And so that's part of the role of all of our organizations, is to do that work.
So I've been having conversations with insurers as well about Ask Ellyn. And what's interesting, because she's really in the friend zone. She's there to be a companion. And again, she's solving an important piece of the trauma that comes with any kind of a cancer diagnosis. But the way that they're solving for that right now, insurers, is that, if you're in the US, you might be part of a very elaborate program where you're getting assigned a nurse navigator or a behavioral health consultant, or Kaiser Permanente was very, very proud of themselves for setting up a hotline that was answering non-medical questions. It's very expensive and not particularly scalable. And I remember asking one insurer, so these resources that you're putting forward, what languages do they speak? And it was passable Spanish, and the materials were in Spanish. So, just imagine a world where an AI companion could be introduced that could speak every language and potentially siphon off. The humans aren't going to go away here, but that AI companion could be there and siphon off 10 to 20% of those questions, and you start to extrapolate what the cost savings might be to that insurer. And also, provide a better client experience, better member experience, and also a more inclusive member experience, So I think there's huge potential for insurers, but you have to find the right organizations who actually have that vision. I have a lot of conversations with corporates right now in, everything, medical equipment. You start working the ecosystem, you knock on the doors for everybody. Insurance, medical equipment manufacturers, pharmaceuticals, and there's a lot of like, ooh, AI, that's cool. Ooh, no. I spent a lot of time talking like cybersecurity and IT folk and that sort of thing. So somebody's got to take a bold risk here. And I think it's always an issue when you're a startup is you're always on the outside looking in at the corporates, right? And there's a lot of corporates that think they like to play with the startups, but don't really know how to suck that innovation into their world. So.
This is so weird. It seems like women's health issues particularly seem very reactive in terms of innovation. Like, okay, we're having all these fertility problems. Let's pour a bunch of money in fertility. So as you four panelists who have been kind of leaders in this area, like how do you see breaking that where we can have, before something becomes a crisis and affects everybody, like men who are also wanting to have families, like how do we break that? How do we find, investors that want to invest in this stuff early to even, and like you said too, like the endometriosis issue, like it's something that's been normalized. Like how do we break that science too? That's just bad science.
It's data and research. That's really what it comes down to, right? But also like, how many of you have ever had a doctor that actually was proactive about something? Like, I think our whole healthcare system is reactive in the way that it's set up. So I think that but then I don't know if it's any better south of the border either. So I don't think anybody's really cracked that code. I think we're all just generally reactive and like, it's sick care. It's not value-based care, whatever the hell they say in the US now. But it's data and research, really, in reality, that's going to help facilitate that. I mean, our biggest vision at Hyivy is that we can use our data to pull together profiles of patients and be able to predict proactively if that patient is at high risk of XYZ things. But I mean, we don't have the data and we have to create the data now. So you can only be as proactive as what is given to the doctors and the people who care and the patients in the first place. But then that comes back, once again, you are the driver of your own healthcare. So you're the only one who can be proactive at the end of the day and just go and keep trying to find that answer. If you don't hear what you want to hear, go to the next person, go to the next person, go to the next person. Eventually your doctor might fire you, but then just find another one, who cares? Doug Ford will fix it, right? I think, I don't know.
I think coming from, a community and societal perspective, I think it's also about breaking these patterns of thinking. And, coming from a youth perspective, I do see these patterns of thinking repeated. And, sometimes we come back from like different podcasts that advertise toxic masculinity. And I think with Ask Eve, I really wanted not just for it to be about the people who menstruate who need it, but also for other people who have questions and want a safe space to ask answers. Because I know, and I've seen some guys at my school and they're like, oh, what's this? And then they get ridiculed by their friends. And I think that's so terrible. But with Ask Eve, if they have questions, they can go to it and make sure that they're informed and make sure that, I have this question, how can I help? And I feel like when you start understanding the problem, we come back to the data again. But once you understand the problem, you're able to start questioning the different biases we have about it, and then you're able to work towards the solution.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for all that you're doing. It's absolutely incredible. I just want to say I'm a huge fan. I am not in the tech world. I'm an osteo. If any of you ever meet that doctor who is into prevention, please let me know. I would love to buy them lunch and, have a chat about what's up. It'd be great. One thing that I was chatting with this amazing counselor I just hired in Guelph, and she talked about in the world of social work, they actually have now what's called practice-based evidence. And I just wanted to give you those 3 words in that order. If that helps you at all ever in what you're doing, it's really given me inspiration, because I see what I see in practice. As an osteo, I put my hands on people, you feel a change, and it's like, I don't have the money to do the research, to do the thing. I don't have the resources. And, you know, sometimes there's just no time. And having those 3 words put in that order has been an absolute game changer. So if that inspires any one of you or any of the people around you, I just wanted to share that with you, because it's been a game changer in the last 24 hours for me.
Just want to share a secret. None of us have any money or any time. But it hasn't really gotten in the way. I mean, we're still out there doing it. I think just to add to that, you know, there's practice-based evidence, but the other thing that I'm really passionate about is patient-led innovation. You know, my friend Pat Bellevaux likes to say, the person that is closest to the problem is closest to the solution. And it's something that I think all of us have had that firsthand experience, and it's something that, you know, has really, I mean, it's ignited the passion in us to want to make a difference, but we also really have lived the problem, right? And so I think that there's a lot of work that can be done there as well, and it's something it's a drumbeat that I have been banging on lately.